This is Life Transformation Radio. Prepare to engage. Seatbelt activated. Download initiated. Your quantum journey of transformation begins in 3, 2, 1.
Here at Life Transformation Radio, we are committed to share more about real life, love, the power of positivity, romance, and of course, laughter. We care about helping others find their internal drive and purpose. We celebrate life's challenges and overcoming them. I want to thank you for listening today. We've got an amazing show. On this show, my guests are amazing people who are forces for the good in the world around them and live a life of transformation. My guest today does just that. Today, Susan Lynch and I discuss how a stigmatized death can impact families. If you want to learn how and why a stigmatized death can impact families and how animals can help us heal through difficult times, this is the show for you. Susan Lynch is a former competitive dog trainer who's been training, competing, and volunteering with her golden retriever since 1995. She founded Life with Rune, a Facebook group that hosts hundreds of free training videos and socializing techniques in 2020. And in 2021, she was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award for the Golden Retriever Club of America for her dedication to educating new puppy owners. She has a memoir, Life After Kevin, A Mother's Search for Peace and the Golden Retrievers That Led the Way. It's available for pre-order on Amazon.com. And today we have her live in the studio. We're talking about all kinds of cool things, dogs, and then we're going to go deep and we're going to talk about how you have transformed your life from the death of your son. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Really nice to have you here. So first of all, I just want to tell you that I'm so sorry for the loss of your son. Anytime a parent loses a child is devastating. And
thank you.
I've almost been in your situation with my daughter having her strokes and brain surgery and coma, and we prepared for her death 72 times, and they told us death was imminent those times. Thankfully, she is still alive with us, and I can't say that I know exactly how you feel because I can call her and text her, and I can't imagine that. And I just want to thank you for being here, for sharing this story with others, because I think it's an important story to have. And I think talking about it is important. There's a lot of death surrounding us right now. And I think that if we talk about it, it can make it less stigmatized and more open to transformation. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you were a dog trainer. You've been a competitive dog trainer. Golden Retrievers are just incredible souls. They are the most just incredible animals. They're like people, except they can't talk. I mean, the way they communicate, it's pretty amazing. Golden Retrievers.
Yeah, that's the hallmark of the breed, is that they're just such wonderful family dogs. And, I grew up with them as a kid. And I knew I wanted my kids to have one. And we ended up getting our first puppy when they were 6 and 4. So I was training a puppy and training the kids at the same time.
Yeah. The time I've seen Golden Retrievers, and I've seen a lot of them, and my sister actually raises them and trains them to be service animals. And it's an incredible experience, but they are remarkable dogs. And it's interesting because remarkable people find Golden Retrievers.
Yeah,
I've noticed that.
They're a special breed. They really are.
Yeah, the dogs as well as the people that have Golden Retrievers. I find they're very special people. They're very heart-centered. They're very loving. They're very kind, and that's really how you would describe a Golden Retriever. I'm sitting here with you, and I can feel your energy, and you come across a very heart-centered person, and I'm really thrilled to have you here. So you're training dogs, you're competing, and then do you receive a phone call Is that where this all begins?
Yeah. So I dabbled in it a little bit when the kids were little. I didn't have much time, I was a stay-at-home mom. So I didn't have much time, but I knew I loved it. And when the kids graduated from high school, I had more time, and it was a wonderful cushion, for the empty nest blues. And I started really getting into it, and I started traveling up and down the East Coast. I live in New Hampshire, and I had driven out to a national competition. The Golden Retriever Club of America hosts a national competition. It's a week long, and I was out there with my two dogs, Manny and Trip, and I was on the way home. I had spent the week out there. I was on the way home, and it's a 15-hour drive. And I got to Western New York, and I got a phone call. I pulled into a rest area, and I had a phone call from a police officer in California where my son Kevin was living. And he had just said that Kevin had died. And it was completely unexpected. He didn't have any details other than he was at a party the night before. He went to bed. He was with two friends in an apartment, and he didn't wake up the next day.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
How old was Kevin?
He was 25.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he was out in California living his life. You're being the supportive mom, and
yeah. So he graduated high school in 2009 and went to college in Montreal. He was there for a year, and he came back. And I think that's when he started having a hard time. He really didn't feel like his life was going in a great direction. And he got depressed. And unbeknownst to me, he started using opioid pills. So I had no idea. He was working, and I knew he was smoking pot. He did get arrested he did get arrested for possession of marijuana, right, which wasn't legal at the time. And he finally came to me in 2014, and he said, "Mom, I want to move. I want to get out on my own. I want to start again, start fresh. I want to move to California." And I said, "Okay, I know you can do it." And I gave him my blessing. And people have asked me, "Do you regret, giving him your blessing for that?" And I said, "No, because I wanted him to know that he had my belief that he was going to be able to do it." And he was hitting his stride out there. He really was. And I think it was something he was clean out there, according to his friends. And he was saying to a friend of his that he was kind of craving opiates in September of that year. And then the next month, he did it at a party and was gone.
Wow. What was that like for you when you got that call from the police? Like, you pulled over the side of the road. What was that like?
Yeah, it was, I got my phone said, caller unknown. And I was like,
unknown caller. Those are the worst.
Yeah,
that's, the only people that call are scammers in law enforcement.
Right. So I said, I'm not going to answer that call. And then I heard my phone beep, and I thought, well, that's weird. I have a message. And then I listened to it, and it was just this very casual voicemail saying, "This is Officer so-and-so from the Sheriff's Department. Please call me back when you get a minute." And I was like, ugh. So I pulled into a rest area, New York State rest area, and I called him back, and he just kind of blurted it out. I mean, there was no cushioning that. He just said, how do you know Kevin Lynch? And I said, he's my son. And he said, he's dead. And, it's just like the air just gets sucked out of your lungs in the world. And the only thing I could think of to say was, what do you mean? And he said, we don't have a lot of details. And he had gone to a party the night before with two of his friends, and they went to bed at like 3 a.m, and they woke up and Kevin was gone. And
Wow.
he said that it will take, it took 4 months to get the toxicology report to come back. And when we did, it was multiple drug intoxication. So he had mixed alcohol and opiates. And yeah. So there's a lot of stigma around overdose. And I felt it. And I felt the shame that goes along with that.
Yeah, I find that, first of all, I just want to, I'm glad that you had the hindsight to pull over and make that call, because I'm just imagining, I've been around people that have been informed of a death, and you kind of lose it. And so I'm really glad you had the foresight to pull over. I'm sure that was incredibly difficult.
Yes. So the odd thing was that I could compartmentalize because I had to get home. I was still 7 hours away from home.
Oh my gosh.
So I was,
okay.
I was halfway through a 15-hour drive, and I was by I was by myself. My dogs were with me in the back, but everybody kept saying, I'll come and get you. I'll come. And I was like, I can't wait for you to come here and get me. I'm driving home. And
my heart is just, wow. I can't imagine what that drive was like.
Yeah.
Did you listen to music? How did you do that?
I was listening to a book on tape. It was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, if you've ever read it.
Okay.
It's about
I've heard of it, yes.
It was about the Holocaust. So it was nice and dark.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're going to stay in the mode there.
I put it in, and that was what I focused on. And I thought, and because my husband was calling me every 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm always the type of person that has been, especially with dog training, I think of my end game and I work backwards. Right. So my problem was, I have to get home. I have to use the restroom. I have to let my dogs out to go to the bathroom, and I have to get gas. So
you have the dogs with you, didn't you?
I did. Yeah.
Oh my.
And we had planned on staying overnight. My plan was to drive to New York, I had a hotel room, stay there, and then finish the drive on Sunday, the following day. But I just pushed through and drove the rest of the way home.
It's amazing when life changes in a moment's notice, how all the things that you had planned for, that you didn't have time for, that everything shifts. It's quite remarkable that way. And the strength that you acquire, and it requires a lot of strength. And to do a 7-hour drive with golden retrievers after getting that news is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
That's a survivor story right there.
I tell people I knew how to drive, my challenge was after that. What do I do now?
I can only imagine. And, you talked about the stigma, and I find that really fascinating, in that people are so judgmental of people that are in crisis. it's very interesting. And they don't know how to be. So when my daughter had her strokes, we had the dearest, closest friends in the world. And all of our dearest, closest friends vanished. They were gone. And people came out of the woodwork that we didn't even know that we were friends. And, it's amazing how even with her having stroke, there's conversations among other people of, is that really what it was? Was it drugs? Did she fall? Let's see. All these different scenarios, instead of, maybe it's a coping mechanism for people that they do that and create a stigma so that they can put themselves away from it, because, people tend to project what they fear the most. So it might be what's in their closets and what's in their household that they're dealing with, that they're going to create that to push it away so that it's not in their home. But I'm sorry that people were that way, and death enough is enough to just devastate you. And then to have people under their breath, making comments, and when people are talking about you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. And I also think that people they have to assign blame, right?
Exactly.
So there has
Always.
to be, it's either somebody has to be at fault. And
Always.
with shame, it was, I felt the blame was my own, like at what point
Right.
did I do the wrong thing? Where did I fail him? It was shame towards myself, not towards Kevin. But
Right.
I couldn't bear the thought of somebody blaming him or thinking differently about him.
Right.
And that would be how he would be remembered, by how he died and not who he was as a person.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking, the way that some people, act in those situations. And I think as a coping mechanism for them, but I 100% agree that people have to have a end game. They have to have an outlet of like, oh, this has happened, because they don't like uncertainty, because it makes them feel vulnerable to things happening. And, one of the things you talk about is it's an accidental overdose. There are, overdoses where, there's a suicide note, and it's very clear that they've overdosed on medicine to do that. And, for people to judge, when someone has a health condition, and drug addiction and alcohol addiction is a health condition, and it's treated medically. And, that's one thing that doesn't help people support other people, and that there's this stigma of drug and alcohol addiction. And it's painful enough for people that are going through it, as well as the families, than to be stigmatized. And it's so unnecessary. And so I hope that people are listening to this show and this interview, and if they're feeling that way towards someone around them, maybe they can look deep inside themselves and know that, the mom and the dads and the brothers and the sisters are hurting a lot. And that, adding that extra gossip or just nastiness is so unnecessary. And to look deep within yourself and your heart and your soul and see what makes you tick to do that.
Yeah, I think that when I wrote my book and write, whenever I write and speak to people, I talk about how if you were in this situation, what think about what it would be like for you, but it's really, really difficult for people to be able to put themselves in that situation. And another thing I think that people don't realize that they're crossing a line is when they ask you what happened or how did they die.
Right.
Because that shame, I ended up keeping a secret. I ended up keeping Kevin's cause of death a secret for 2 years. I didn't
Now,
tell
is that
him.
because of your own
Correct.
thoughts? So you had your own. Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just
I
outside.
felt that I felt the judgment. I felt the stigma. And because I hadn't had the time to process Kevin having any kind of drug problem or an opiate drug problem, I needed to process it by myself. So I was not going to subject myself to the judgment by sharing how he died. So I kept it a secret for 2 years. I ended up telling my parents after just this series of events that had happened. And I just said, I can't do it anymore. I can't control how others are going to, what their opinions are. And so I made it a point to, if I'm going to tell people, I'm really going to tell people, and I'm going to talk about it and make people aware. And one of the big things, like I said, was when people say, what happened and how did he die? And it seems like a very innocent question, but when a person is feeling when there's a stigmatized death, they're feeling some form of shame, right? Some form of remorse and guilt and what did I do wrong? And so if they don't put the cause of death in an obituary, if they don't tell you how they died, please don't ask. Just give them your condolences and leave it at that. But it was always, oh my God, I'm so sorry. What happened?
What happened? Exactly. Oh yeah. You see a lot of deaths on, and it's, yeah. We talk about suicide on this show, and I have friends that committed suicide. I've probably lost 5 friends to suicide since this pandemic started. And it's interesting because a few of the people that I know in high school committed suicide, and how so sad to say that so and so passed away, and blah blah blah, and everybody and all the comments are like, "I'm so sorry. Your thoughts are in prayers." And what happened? You guys don't even know what happened. What happened? Hey, what happened?
Yeah.
This person no longer is alive. We're gonna mourn his death and celebrate his life, but everybody wants to know what happened.
Well, think about when somebody in the media dies that's young, right? If you get a 25-year-old movie star or singer, whatever, and they die, what's the first thing everybody does? They go to their phone.
What happened?
What happened?
Yeah.
What happened? It's like we're conditioned to ask that response and to ask that question. And it's just
if it is meant to be public, it'll be made public very clearly.
Right.
If it's not, it's not. And a lot of times it is an accidental drug overdose, and other times it's a suicide, and other times it's nefarious and they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
People don't have a hard time talking about a death if there's a car accident, but there's so many different ways. Even if someone is a victim of a crime, most families will not share that with others because that's stigmatized. It's so absurd. They're like, well, what happened? And what was he doing? And blah, blah, blah. And, all that. And it's interesting as a human dynamic how, people have the curiosity. But I think in regards to a younger person, I think people's mortality is so fragile. They're so afraid of dying that they're like, well, what did they do? Because I don't want to do that.
Right.
I think that's what it, I've had a few near-death experiences. I'm very blessed. I'm on borrowed time. I'm so thrilled to be here. I live every day like I want to be alive, and I take I'm so grateful every day to be alive. Like, so grateful. And I see people go through life and they're so oblivious to life, and they have no idea that at any moment your life can change like that. You can get that phone call. It may not be you that has that impact, but it could be your son, your daughter, your mother, your father. And, we're human beings. We live and we die, and the circle of life happens. And it's something that we all have to deal with, and we all deal with it in different ways. But to circle back, I would say I agree with you in that when you see someone has passed and they don't have the cause of death, that, it might be a good idea to really not inquire.
I had
If they want you to know, they'll tell you.
Yeah, I would say 98% of the time, I could not tell somebody that Kevin had died without somebody saying what happened or how did he die. It was really amazing to me. And as a result, I would always approach somebody and be like, do I want to tell them? Should I tell them? Is it worth it? They're going to ask me, how am I going to respond? And it was always this like dancing around the, well, we're not really sure. And well, it was just became a really difficult situation on top of the grief.
Absolutely. Absolutely 100%. I've one of my dearest friends, and her brother passed away from an accidental overdose recently. And it's a stigmatized death. And her parents are suffering so much. And they're in a religious community that frowns upon any drug or alcohol use. Not that any religion actually condones drug use, but I'm just saying that, extra content into your body is very discouraged, strongly discouraged. So the pressure that they must be feeling, and my heart goes out to them, is that, wow, well, you kind of failed as a parent.
Exactly.
And the thing is that that's not true. I'm a parent, you're a parent, they're parents. And, I've done lots of work, and the reality is that you can't rescue your children forever. Even in that environment where you were at, you can't rescue them forever. There's a certain point where you get to and say, look, you've fallen a lot. You haven't hit rock bottom. You're near your rock bottom. I am giving you a place to land. I am supportive of you. And if you cannot work within these boundaries, then I, as a parent, because I love you so much, I will step away and allow you to hit your rock bottom so that you can heal and rise from that. And it's one of the most difficult conversations that a parent has. And it's one of the most difficult actions in our life that we have. But I will say that as parents, we're not to blame for the behavior of our kids. They're individuals, and we support them. But if they're falling and falling and falling, and they're not getting it and rebounding back, I mean, I have a lot of friends that that are parents and that have children that are into drugs and they live on the street. I have an incredible friend, and she, her son has absolutely nothing. He was, a few months ago, he lost everything, got drugs, got kicked out of the halfway house, and got in the street and got tragically beat up and wanted to come live with mom. And you can't let him come live with you. It's those hard decisions that you have to make. And, you know, I think it's important that people really look deep inside themselves and how they interact with people that are parents, that have children that have substance abuse, challenges, or they've lost someone from that, and have compassion, and that they've done the best they could. And that's all we really can do as parents, is to do the best we can.
Absolutely. I think that parents really take on, this is what I see, parents really take on their kids' successes and failures, right?
Yes.
So somehow they are a representation of us and how successful we were as a parent. So if our kid is successful and, doing well and has the great job and everything, that's a reflection on us. Same thing if our kid is, out doing drugs or whatever and doesn't have the life that we would want for them, somehow we take it in and it's a reflection on us. And so what my experience anyway was to hide that and to not talk about that. And it seems like the more I talk about it, the more I'm hearing from parents saying, yeah, my son does that too, or, whatever. So more of their stuff is coming out because somebody else is talking about it, well, okay, so their life isn't perfect. Then I could share a little bit about my life, So shame is a very isolating emotion.
Yeah. And I will disagree on one thing, and maybe I've done a lot of work. I don't feel that way. I never really have. I don't feel that I get credit for who my daughter is, whether how successful she is or how challenged she is. I just did the best I could. I don't get credit. She gets the credit. I mean, I actually go through life. Go ahead.
That is a very enlightened response, because I don't think a lot of parents feel that way.
No, they don't. And it's the way they were raised. And I mean, even the point of, and I've done a lot of work and on myself. And even when people say that I've done something great, wrote a book or I've done a podcast that has really impacted people, I honestly don't believe that I get the credit for that. I believe that I have a team. I believe the universe and my spirit guides and my angels, they all are there with me. It's not the Rob show. I'm a catalyst. I'm a vehicle, but I don't do a whole lot. I'm just a vessel. And it's a very peaceful way to be. I know a lot of people are getting to that point, but I would really have someone who's listening right now that feels that way, that we don't get to take credit for our kids. We don't. We did the best we could. If they turned out great, amazing. If they have turned out with challenges, you know what? Amazing. Because we did the best we could, and that's what happened. And as you can look at a child. Like I used to look at my daughter, and you probably looked at your son when they were just little kids, and you're like a little person. Like you're your own little world. You do your own thing. You're an autonomous creature. And I think parents think that they have so much impact and influence among their kids. And we guide them, we set boundaries, and we do things like that. But that's just the job of being a parent. I don't think we get credit for that. I think it's kind of, I don't know, narcissistic almost in a way to be that way. And that we're taking away the power for the kids.
I agree with you 100%. It took me Kevin's death and all of the grief work that I went through to come to that point. But I absolutely took credit for my kids' successes and took credit for their failures or, challenges. So
it's a very interesting phenomenon about that. I was at a social event recently, and people were talking about their kids, and it was like they were talking about their cars or their jobs. Like, like when you go to a high school reunion, everybody wants to talk about their jobs and stuff and how great their life is and all that stuff. And it's just like sad. My high school reunion was coming up and I'm like, I really don't want to go because the last one, all everybody talked about was trying to one up everybody. And I'm just like, they're not in my life. I never talked to them. I reached out. They don't reach back, and it's just like, why? And I think that people need to look deep inside themselves if they are taking credit for their children, because they just did the best they could. They gave them guidance, which is what our job as a parents, and give them the tools to then go fly. Just like a bird, man. The bird doesn't give the baby bird credit for flying. It's like, you're flying because you're flying.
I agree 100%. 100%.
And I think of some of the parents that I know, my friends, and I'm like, wow, their whole identity is tied into the success of their kids. Like, wow, that's incredible.
Yep.
They've lost themselves.
Yep.
Wow. So let's talk about the transformation. So you survived, you thrived from your son's passing, and you turned your training of the dogs into helping people overcome transformations in their life.
So I learned a lot from my dogs. And I'll say the initial thing that I learned was, so they were used to being trained 5 to 6 days a week. Okay. So they were really athletes, and they went from that to a 30-minute walk in the woods. So, they had.
You're like, Susan, what's up?
What's going on here?
They're giving you that look that golden retrievers do. They just look at you like, you freaking idiot. Why are you not doing what you're supposed to be doing?
Well, I say they mirrored my grief. They would stay with me in the house. They were quiet. They never made me feel like, come on, let's go. They never had any of that. So they were like, they would follow me from room to room. And when I did take them out on a walk, I could see they were enjoying themselves. So it was this beautiful, they were in a beautiful embodiment of balance. And what I learned was that they were showing me that I absolutely had to give my grief the attention it needed for as long as I needed it. But yet I can also enjoy what was right in front of me and enjoy the beauty in nature. And they would be rolling and wagging their tail. And I thought, that's what I want, because I didn't have any directions. I had zero I had no idea how I was going to move forward. And I absolutely could have stayed in that pit of grief. It would have been so easy to do that.
I'm glad you didn't.
And I thought, okay, that's a direction. That's how I'm going to move forward. So that I always credit them as being my first teachers. But so after I started volunteering, I got my dogs therapy dog certified, and I started volunteering with hospice. And they were, my dog Manny was the greeter for kids who had lost a parent. So he was, we were a grief support team for a grief group. And then in
That just makes me smile. It chokes me up, makes me smile. I just think that's a beautiful thing. A greeter for a child who lost a parent, and that loving, beautiful soul of a dog.
Yeah. So he was like something for the kids to go toward, because they were ages 4 to 18. So, they come in the room and they're real, it's awkward. And so the dog was a nice icebreaker. And it made me feel good to help other people. And that was a huge part of my healing, was to be able to, offer myself and what I can do to help.
Right.
So in 2020, when COVID hit, Manny had passed away in February of 2020, and I had been on a list to get a puppy. And my puppy came home in April of 2020, and we were in lockdowns. So I thought, this is going to be a disaster for a generation of dogs, that they're not going to be able to go to classes and be socialized and all of that. So I thought, well, I know what to do. And I have an 8-week-old puppy. So I'm just going to start recording what I do with my own puppy. And it just kind of snowballed. And I committed to a year. I said, all right, I'm going to focus on, what I do. Because that first year is so really, really important to lay the foundation of manners and just to socialize them and make sure that they're not, afraid of certain things. So,
right.
So I did that, and the Golden Retriever Club of America picked up on it, and they started featuring our group in their Facebook group. And then the following year, they awarded me the Lifetime Achievement Award, which was quite an honor. So now I went off brand and I got a Beagle puppy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and he's a blast. I always, I tell this cute story about Kevin. When he was little, he used to, when he thought that I was going to say no to something, he would be little and he would tap his fingers together and he'd look at me and he'd be like, Mom, how about yes? So,
wow.
Yeah. So I
that's adorable. That's beautiful.
It was so cute. That. And, so I sign out, that's how I sign all my books. How about yes? That's kind of like the theme.
I love it.
And kind of like what I do to check in. When I think that I can't do something, I'll check in and I'll be like, all right, how about yes? How does that feel? And trust my intuition. So I say that Ripple, my Beagle puppy, was my latest how about yes. Because
I love it.
Yeah. So he's been a great addition to the family.
I love it. Susan, thank you so much for taking time out to be here and share your story about your son, Kevin. And thank you for being the transformative person that you are and impacting so many lives in a positive way. And I really want to acknowledge you for that. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Absolutely. If you want to get in touch with Susan, you can reach her at susan-lynch.com. You can hear about her book, Life After Kevin, and reach out to her, talk to her about golden retrievers and other things. It's all good. Thank you so much for your support and taking the time out of your busy and precious day to listen to Life Transformation Radio. We so appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me, along with my very special guests, to touch your heart, move your soul, and inspire you to live a life of transformation. I'm Rob Actis. Until next time.
This is Life Transformation Radio. Download complete.